Because Paul McCartney's first solo album is 50 years old today, I thought it'd be a bit of fun to look through the various versions that have come out over the years, the various vinyl and CD reissues. Now this is an original UK pressing I've got in my hands. The famous Bowl of Cherries cover. And on the back a picture of Paul taken in Scotland. Very cute with the baby in his jacket. Gatefold pressing, obviously it's just a single record, it's quite a short album. Little montage of Paul around this period, all taken by Linda more or less, apart from the one of Linda. And this was on Apple. Of course this album famously came out before Let It Be, the Beatles' last album, so as expected it's on the Apple label there. And there's the reverse. So this came out, as I say, 50 years ago today, 17th of April 1970. There's the spine, McCartney. This features Maybe I'm Amazed, which was a single when the Wings Over America tour happened. But there's no actual singles of this album. There was never any singles released from the record. Another Day was a single around this time. It was actually a bit later, but there was no singles at all, probably because the Beatles were still active, and I think even Paul probably thought it might not be a good idea to do that. But I think Maybe I'm Amazed, if the studio version of Maybe I'm Amazed had been released as a single, I'm sure it would have been a number one. So that's the original vinyl. Now McCartney was first issued on CD in 1987, which was the time of same year the Beatles came to CD for the first time. So this is the sort of UK EMI Parlophone pressing. I keep this in my little plastic sleeve. Now there's no bonus tracks or anything like that, it's just the 13 tracks from the album. This is what the CD looks like. Fairly much standard EMI Parlophone design at that time. And then fairly thin booklet, cover, track listing there, and then there's the gatefold pictures are replicated here. Obviously an extra picture there of Paul repeated. And there's the back, so I mean there's nothing much going on other than just repeating some photos. This was 87, so it wasn't really the era of let's have a 40-page booklet with essays, etc. EMI had released some of the other albums, the Wings albums, on CD at this point in time. Some of them did have extra tracks, but as I said, because there was no singles from this, there wasn't really anything to add to it. It was just the standard album. Then in 1992 there was a DCC 24-karat gold remastered by Steve Hoffman, and it came in this special case, which I've always liked. It's a very clever design, this. The idea is that the CD sits on that, and the CD never in contact with anything. It's a floating mechanism. It's quite a clever idea. These are in the days when CDs seemed like a premium product, and you know they're not as looked down upon as they are today. But as I say, this is a unique mastering by Steve Hoffman, so this is well regarded. In terms of the booklet, this is actually printed on glossy paper. You can see in the light there, it's very glossy. Back cover, front cover. It's very basic, it's only 4 pages. There's the gatefold selection of images. Interestingly, you do get the Apple label from the original vinyl release. That's replicated there as a little kind of collectible. Steve Hoffman did quite a few albums from Paul's 70s catalogue. He did all the early ones. They're quite sought after and they're quite expensive. Ram, for instance, quite expensive. I think they finished around Wings at the Speed of Sound, maybe one after that. He never quite got to finish off the run of albums, so there was no Back to the Egg, for instance, or I don't think there was a London Town either. But that's 92. Then the next CD release would have been in 1993, part of the Paul McCartney reissue collection, and that didn't have any bonus tracks either, so I don't appear to own that. I probably didn't buy it because it just seemed pointless. There was no bonus tracks. The mastering was actually regarded as not very good in the end. They had this no noise technology in it, and I think even Paul McCartney, when he did his 2011 reissue campaign, even he didn't think they were very good. So we're skipping 93 CD, but this is 1999. This is a Japanese mini LP vinyl replica CD, and the idea here is it replicates exactly the original vinyl. So there's the obi strip there, The most noticeable thing about this CD version is it's very, very thick card, and this gatefold here is pasted on, so that's pasted onto the inside. So it's constructed like one of these tip-on sleeves that they quite often go on about. So it's got quite a thick spine. If you look at that spine, that's quite a lot thicker than the original vinyl that we looked at earlier on. But it's very good quality, as I say, extremely thick card. If we look at the CD now, the actual CD design isn't much to write home about. It's not dissimilar to that 1987 CD, and given that this is 12 years later. But it does come in the usual Japanese style rice paper. And what else is there? Well, there's a fold out bit of paper here that's got the lyrics and some notes. So the lyrics to the songs are all in English and Japanese. So that's a nice CD collectible. So that's 1999. And then what happened in 2011 is McCartney, the first solo album, and McCartney 2, they were reissued at the same time, and they were the second wave of reissues after Band on the Run from October 2010. So this is what the CD version, this isn't the 2 CD actually, I've only got the single CD version, but this is what the archive collection CD looked like. The familiar stripe down the side to tell you that it's part of the collection series. So this opens out, I mean this is nicely done. It's probably, putting aside the Japanese vinyl replica, this is the nicest CD presentation. So the booklet there, I mean, these photos are very familiar. Funnily enough, they don't replicate the actual gatefold, they just make the pictures bigger and just have them across more pages. But there's the lyrics, and the titles are done in the style of McCartney, and some archive photos of Paul recording the album. The disc looks good as well, nice and minimal. This kind of packaging is very consistent with what Paul did with his other archive collections. And there's Paul on the back, the familiar picture with the jacket. So that's from 2011, so that's the single CD. Let's take a look at the deluxe book version. I think this is 2 CDs and a DVD. Yes, this was only 3 discs. I'm pretty sure from memory this is the least generous of the deluxe editions that have come out. You know, you have to work with what material you've got. There wasn't really much kicking around at this point in time. So, I mean, beautifully presented. There's the cover on the front. And this book is, like all the McCartney books, it's really good. Just goes through and tells you the story of the album. The photos look great, big, on a full page. You really get more of a feel for the making of the album with this book. Pictures of the recording equipment, lots of pictures of the instrumentation. I mean, there's so much unique content in this book. It's absolutely fantastic. That's good, isn't it? Look at that. That's the uncropped photo. They were in Antigua, this was taken, that photo. So yeah, I mean, this is by far the best version, really. There's just so much to enjoy in this book. And the book also recreates the famous press release where Paul, effectively in the media's eyes, kind of said he was quitting the Beatles. So there it is there. So that's the kind of question and answer sheet that went out with promotional copies of the album, with Paul basically confirming that he's not going to be working with the Beatles again. So this did have a bonus disc of audio. I mean, it's not the best, I have to say. Womenkind, track 7 on the bonus disc, is particularly dire. There's some stuff that fast forwards to 1979, some tracks from this album live in Glasgow. And there is a DVD. So that's the book. Last but not least, in 2017, Paul reissued McCartney again on vinyl. It's on red vinyl. In fact, I'll get the red vinyl. So this was the red vinyl reissue. Now, unlike the archive releases, it doesn't have the strip down the side. So there's not too much to say about this other than pressed on red vinyl, which is quite nice. So that came out in 2017. There was a few other coloured vinyl of other albums at the time. But what was really good was in Japan they decided to do another series of vinyl replica mini LP CDs to go with the coloured vinyl. So it was an opportunity to get some very nice CD editions again. So this is actually an SHM CD, and there's a nice obi there. I mean, this is fairly much like the other Japanese version, except that it's thinner card, it's not quite as thick, the card. But the presentation is fantastic, and what's always so good about these Japanese things is how much attention they pay to the cover. So if you look at it, they haven't over brightened it. You know, the white on the wall is not too white, as is often the case. You know, if you compare that original CD cover to the Japanese one, you can kind of see the difference. So this is just another variation of a vinyl replica CD. The disc this time around is nicer design. It's more consistent with the 2011 CD. And as usual in Japan, this isn't a fold out poster this time, you just get a booklet. It's got an introduction in English and Japanese, and it's got all the lyrics in English and Japanese. It might seem like slight overkill having so many versions of this album. My only defence is that they've been collected over quite a long period, over 30 years. But it's a wonderful album, and I'll be playing it today on its 50th birthday. So this is Paul from Super Deluxe Edition, taking a look at McCartney, Paul's first solo album from 1970.